All right, welcome back everyone to the old switcheroo where we're talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jaymo. Join us as we grand slam our way through two games today. Take Me Out to the Ball Games is the name of the episode. We are playing baseball on the NES and Super Baseball Simulator 1000 on the Super Nintendo as part of our epic quest to review, research, and kind of rate every game in the Nintendo Switch online catalog. Now, Mike, baseball, what's your family's relationship to it? Because I kind of have a fraught nostalgia and history with the game.
So I think it's something that there's a little bit of an awareness, but it's not a huge thing.
Okay.
Both my brother and I played t-ball.
They're like in elementary school.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like baseball, but better.
It's basically what you have before kids have really learned how to either learned how to hit or learn how to pitch. I'm not sure which one of those is more important.
Yeah.
I just know that that is a transition at which point I parted ways with the sport.
Yeah, gotcha. I mean, I like t-ball. I'd play adult t-ball. I'm pretty sure there's adult t-ball leagues, actually. What about Dodger Stadium? Was your family a Dodger family at all? Because mine was.
I would say not too heavily. I feel like we went there with Cub Scouts. Like I've been on the field at Dodger Stadium.
Oh, like for a Weeblos event?
Like it was a Cub Scout thing where it's like the whole pack. They'd have various scout troops and stuff, and it's like you get to walk around the field. And my brother
Wasn't Cub Scouts
signed an
called
autograph.
Weeblos?
That was just the last like year of it.
Oh, it was like a ranking thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. My family would always go to Dodger Stadium whenever the Pirates were in town, Pittsburgh Pirates, because my family has an obsession with this little area of Pennsylvania where Shirley Jones grew up because of my mom and her fascination with that, sort of retro actor. And so we would always go and root for the Pirates, and the Pirates would lose every time. And so I don't like baseball really, and I wonder if it's because my whole association with it is just repeatedly going home the loser from those games.
I don't think it's that because I've been a UCLA football fan through some bad seasons.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm just not much of a sports guy in general, but Dodger Stadium was sort of a, once a year sort of thing in my family. So let's go into our two baseball games today. We are going to be starting off with baseball on the NES, released in 1985. Let me read the description from the Nintendo Switch online catalog. It says, play 9 innings of fierce sandlot competition with classic NES graphics featuring close-up and overview field perspectives. Select your team and step up to the plate against a computer opponent or a friend. You control the swing of the bat, the speed of the pitch, the hits, the steals, and the double plays. Hear the roar of the crowd as you hit a home run and race across the plate to score. Whether you're a huge sports fan or a classic video game enthusiast, you will definitely enjoy this game. So that's the description of Baseball NES. Before I go into the sort of history and cover of the game, did I ever tell you my weird connection to the movie Sandlot?
No,
Okay, but you remember Sandlot, right? The Disney movie about the young boys who are kind of playing amateur baseball and with dreams of the big league.
I'm gonna say yeah, and that makes me wonder if I have a direction on your connection on this.
If you had said yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it,
yeah. I used to work at Princess Cruises and the call center, and you shared desks, with different people in the office. And my desk mate was the guy. His name's Marty York, and he played Yeah Yeah in the Sandlot. Nice guy. I wonder what
hmm.
happened to him. Yeah. So
Uh,
I don't know. I love that movie. So I just saw the word Sandlot, so I had to jump in there. So let's take a look at the cover art for baseball, since often your first impression of a game is what the cover looks like. Mike, can you talk about the baseball covers? Let's start with the North American box art here on the left. What do you think of it?
I think this is exactly sort of what we expect out of this, in that it is the pixelized depiction of sort of what is going on in the game. Although it does feel like he's wearing blue overalls to play baseball to me.
Yeah, kind of, because he's got like the sleeves the different color, you mean?
Yeah, like it. Or I think it's more that the main part of the shirt and the pants are all like blue, and it
Yeah.
looks like it's one unified thing and gives a weird look to this.
But it is like Mike said, the just basically a screenshot of the game. It just shows you exactly what the game looks like, which was the style at the time. There's a couple of nice little details. I like, that the game is showing off that the ball actually has a shadow, which it does in the game, which was a nice little detail to kind of highlight here on home plate. You got some speed action lines of the ball. It does sort of bother me though that the left batter's box breaks the frame and the right one does not. I don't know if that was a stylistic choice to kind of move your eye to the top right, but once I saw it, it kind of bugged me. But yeah, not much to say about the NES cover. It's just kind of like all the other NES covers at the time. The Japanese one, I think, is more dynamic. It's kind of drawn in a comic style here, and it, features the pitcher, which is just implied on the North American cover. Although I feel like there's also something sort of weird about the pitcher in this drawing. Would you agree?
I mean, I guess it is a weird sort of almost foreshortening to this that kind of gives it a
Yeah,
weird
he's
perspective.
leaning forward, pitching the ball so hard, that his whole body's lurching forward, as actual pitchers do. But there's something about that back leg that looks like instead of being kicked up in the air, it's almost like touching the ground. So I don't know. It just the ratios of the bodies just seem off, but I like it, and I especially like the little detail of the batter sort of shaking his bat. Do you know why they do that in the batter's boxes, just to keep from tensing up?
I would imagine it's something like that, or it's something
Yeah.
sort of that you have. I could even see it being that it's a little bit easier to have the bat slightly in motion to then go into full motion rather than to
Oh,
go from
okay.
stopped to moving,
Right. It kind of it requires less kinetic energy.
or at least can be a smoother motion.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a feeling a lot of this episode is going to be Mike and I sort of realizing we don't know much about baseball. So if you know why the batters wiggle the bat before they hit the ball, let us know in the comments. We'd love to know the answer to that. So let me give you some trivia for baseball on the NES. It was published by Nintendo, and the lead developer was Shigeru Miyamoto, who, of course, we know from our tennis episode, the Mario episodes, and one of the most prolific Nintendo developers of all time. The select your team was by letter. So what I mean by that is that the baseball teams in this game do not have names; they have letters. You can choose Team A, Team C, Team D, Team P, Team R, and then Team Y. And Mike, you look up the actual manual when we do these retro games. Did you know what these letters stood for or what they were supposed to imply to the player?
I mean, the manual doesn't say anything about that.
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't because they're doing this to avoid
Yeah,
licensing
yeah.
issues.
There certainly is an element when you look at this that if you're not really paying attention, you just see like three of the first four letters of the alphabet, and offhand, it's like, oh yeah, that's how that works. And then it goes to PRY. It's like, okay, no, that went entirely off the rails.
Right. Yeah, so it's not just team A, B, C, D, E. It's the letters each stand for one of the pennant winners from the early 80s MLB.
Yeah, and so
So,
Y is the one that gave it away to me of, oh, we're just doing this off of
okay.
American
So
teams.
let's see how many you can get. What the Y stands for.
So Y would be the Yankees.
Correct.
D would be the Dodgers.
Well done.
C is probably the Cardinals.
Yeah, it is. You're good at this. Dang.
R is purple, so it would be the Royals.
Yes. Gosh, dang, Mike. You know your teams. So you still need to get P and A.
Yeah, A, I think there's two that it could be, and I'm going to go athletics.
It is the Athletics, the Oakland Athletics. Oh my God, you're about to be 7 for 7 or whatever number this is. Yes,
Six.
6 for 6. All right, last one. P. Come on, you got this one.
And that's the hard one because
Oh,
there's a
come on, P.
bunch.
Well,
Because
you want
I
a hint?
think there is. So the Padres, I think, was a team at this time, but I don't think they were a good team. So I do not think
These are
it's
based on
them.
the early '80s pennant winners, so I would
Yeah.
say not the Padres.
And so I think that still leaves at least the
And can't
Pirates
you go by
and the
the uniform color?
Phillies. And I
The
don't,
Pirates.
and the Phillies.
Okay.
And
Final answer.
think, I feel like the Pirates had a darker color that they wouldn't be white. So I'm going to go Phillies.
Well done. Grand slam. Got them all. Good job. Dang.
I may not know the sport, but I mostly know the teams.
Yeah, but you even knew some of the uniform colors.
Well, I mean, the Royals, it is like royal purple.
Right. Is that the color of a cardinal? The blue and the red, like the bird?
I think it's the birds is red.
Yeah. Well, and I guess you just have an all red uniform.
Yeah, you probably can't.
I only ever know teams by colors. Like honestly, what I know most about Dodgers is that they're the blue and the white team. And I was infamously teased by my father-in-law when he revealed to the wedding that when he asked me what his favorite football team was, I said the green and the yellow. And then addendum to that story, he doesn't know this, but it's just because that's the team I would play on NFL Blitz, the Packers. I got some more trivia here for the NES.
Weird side bit on this is the
Do
fact
it.
that their eye colors match the same as like the accent colors on these.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's clearly just because it was the same layer, you know.
Oh yeah, no, I 100% get that. It does, however, make the Cardinals and the Phillies seem sort of evil.
Yeah, they're like Terminators. They got red eyes.
Like it's one of the things like I didn't notice it until we've been sitting on this screen for long enough that I'm like, that is a bit perturbing.
Yeah, a little bit. Good. Speaking of P words, perturbing. Good word. So there was also a glitch or hack called the super slow ball in this game. When controlling the pitcher, if you toss the ball, so as a mechanic in the game, as the pitcher, you can press down to throw a fastball, or you can press up while you're pitching to throw a slow ball. But if you manage to press down and up at the same time, you're holding down both the down and up when you pitch, it will do a super slow ball that will be between 0 and 5 miles per hour. But that's impossible to do on a controller, pressing the down and up buttons at the same time. So you could really only reliably do this on emulators, or you could glitch the system by plugging in the NES controller at an angle. Because I don't know if you knew this, Mike. Do you know what those little pins in a controller plug-in do? You know electronics, right?
Yeah, like I'm not sure what question you mean by that.
Well, so like maybe you always knew this, but I was just blown away that like each pin sort of corresponded to a different function on the controller. And so like one couple of pins would be data for based on what buttons you're pressing, but other ones are like electrical grounds and like, power to the controller and stuff like that. So by plugging in the NES controller at an angle, you could sort of mess with the pins that were contacting the actual system and sort of confuse it into thinking that you were pressing up and down at the same time. I don't understand the science behind it though. Did any of that make sense?
I'm trying to figure out how it's managing to send that wrong signal.
Right.
That I'm not sure about, but
There's something about like so the NES has 8 inputs. It has up, down, left, right, B, A, select, and start. And it only has 3 data pins. So it's something like it goes through some sort of chip to read them. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that by plugging in the controller at an angle, you could glitch it. That's just not a thing we
oh,
get
is
anymore.
that why that's doing that?
What's that?
So the weird bit to this is so aside from a data 1, data 2, data 3, there's latch, which I have no idea about.
Sure. Mike's referring to the diagram of the
Yes.
NES controller pins.
Yes. Ground, which is a fairly I didn't realize it would have one, but is a fairly standard electrical component kind of deal.
It's to keep things from damaging, right?
Presumably, yes. So you don't have a
Okay.
buildup of charge in some unexpected way, I guess.
Right.
Power, which I hadn't thought about that it would need, but it would need some because it then needs to send an electric signal back. But
Yeah,
then
you don't have batteries in the NES controllers.
yeah, but then the clock is an interesting thing because I would have presumed prior to this that all time signals were being done on the console side.
Right. Yeah, and not some chip in the controller.
Yeah, and so what I wonder, and I'm going to speculate randomly on things that because of all the speed running, someone else knows exactly. So I'm well aware someone's going to be like, this is entirely wrong. I am wondering if that means that the clock plays a role in if it's having to take a more complex signal and distill it down into the 3 data things. If the clock is being used to effectively bunch the signals in some way, so that you can send the signal over data 1, data 2, data 3, but the clock goes all of the effectively is giving you a way to go. All of the signal in this time frame is linked.
It's got so technical for a very old baseball game, but I'm sure that made sense to somebody. And if it did, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, anyone that understood what I said is going to also understand why I'm wrong, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay.
And I think it's probably fair that baseball is turning into a weirdly technical thing because all baseball is a weirdly technical thing.
Well, good metaphor. I applaud that. It's also crazy that you say that speedrunners will know exactly how this works, and they do need to kind of distill the old consoles down to a science. So baseball is one of the only major sports that can be speed run because the sport does not have a clock to it. So, football or soccer or whatever, it's going to have a timer. And so baseball is one of the few major sports you can speed run. In 2017, retro gamer Matt Holmes set the world record for the baseball NES game. He won a game in 18 minutes and 26 seconds. According to Polygon's Owen S. Good, Holmes was able to clinch the record by taking advantage of the game's primitive AI that always causes the runner on first to advance, even on a fly ball, letting him an easy double play and thus the world record. And this is an actual screenshot from Polygon of him setting the world record with the double play. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Just that even before this was added to the Switch catalog, there were still people who cared about this game. I like to hear that.
Did they say what the score was for speed running this?
It was 3-2. He
Okay.
almost lost the record when he let the other team get 2 runs, and he had to basically mount a comeback.
Okay, that's what I was wondering if this was a situation where the strategy basically was score once and then finish the game as fast as possible.
Yeah, because a big part of the speed running in this game is deliberately striking out just to keep the game moving. And so it's even more impressive. Like, it makes you wonder what he could have done if he had never let the other team get 2 runs.
Yeah, because this seems frustrating to speedrun because I don't,
Yeah.
or specifically because I have questions as to how the speed works on this because it did feel like the speed of the game would change during plays as things were happening.
Yeah, it wasn't the frame rate didn't feel very consistent. It was a little bit erratic.
I was kind of wondering because it seemed to be that it would be the fielding of the ball would go slower and then it would speed up. Is
Hmm.
I did wonder if it had something to do with either one, it doing this to me when it was negatively affecting me in the game, just cheating.
Yeah.
I will always be skeptical of that. But I was thinking more likely, I was wondering if this was almost closer to sort of like the Space Invaders effect,
What is that?
where so in Space Invaders, it is so classically known for as you shoot enemies, the game speeds up.
Oh, okay, okay.
And that is a bug. It's a bug that made the game, I'm not even to say just better, but iconic.
Wow, I didn't know that was unintentional.
Yeah, it's just that when it had to move many things, it went slower. And then as you got rid of them, it sped up and it turned into like, oh, that actually this is great.
I love the idea of critics back in the day coming up to the developers and saying like, "What a genius mechanic, speeding up the game the more you kill the enemies." And they're like, "Yes, that was a great idea, wasn't it?"
Yeah, and so I was almost wondering if this was just hitting something because this had a lot more going on for it than I was expecting for an NES game.
Okay, so let's jump in there and do our Joy Pros versus Joy Cons. Mike, give me what you liked about this game.
Um, I will say I think this had a lot more complexity to it than I'd expected off of what else we'd played on NES.
Yeah, we had previously played in a previous episode the tennis game, so you were thinking of something as basic as that.
Yeah, and so like I was not expecting at all for stealing bases to be a mechanism, for example.
Yeah, and it's kind of easy to understand and kind of just distills it down to timing of you versus the pitcher player. So it felt like sort of exactly how it should work, which was cool.
Yeah, so there's stuff like that. Whereas like I was fairly surprised at how that at just how much that this was willing to do for this early in the game.
Yeah. And in the game, you mean like in-game development.
Yeah, just that this many features of baseball carried over. I was expecting them to have had to simplify this down. Because the other thing is, I mean, this is having to keep track of effectively you have 9 players that are fielding, you have 1 to 4
Runners.
runners that can be out there, and you've technically got the referees out there as well.
Yeah, it's a lot to animate. It's a lot of data to keep track on something that was, from 1985. Gosh, the game is as old as I am. I also think, they deserve a lot of credit for getting a lot of use out of just those 2 buttons, the A button, the B button. The fact that you use the B button to signal your runner or signal them to try to steal a base. And then, you can also throw it to specific bases because the D-pad perfectly matches the layout of a diamond. So, it kind of just was sort of manna from heaven almost, in that like, oh, the NES controller is kind of perfectly designed for this game. That's how I felt anyway.
Yeah, no, it they were able to manage a lot more than I expected.
Agreed, yeah. And it also, to show the game from two different dynamic camera angles. So when you are pitching, you have this close-up view of the diamond, and you can see the details of every player on the bases. And then as soon as the ball gets hit out of view, you instantly cut to this shot of the whole baseball park. And the controls still all work the same, but now you have this over sort of bird's eye view of the match, and it made it kind of feel like you were watching a sports broadcast, just in the way that you get different camera angles when watching a sports game. So yeah, I mean, graphically, mechanically, there was much more to this game than I expected. I would agree with you
I'll
there.
also say it was interesting. The the manual even mentions that the scoreboard can't handle double-digit runs, but
Okay,
that the game is still keeping track of that. So you'll only see a single digit show up, but the total will still be correct.
so it could only go up to 9 even if you get 11 runs in an inning.
Yeah, just because, and I think it's just because of how it's laid. When you look at it on the screen, it was just laid out to only be able to display a single digit.
Yeah. Interesting. So at the end of a game, if the game was secretly keeping track of runs that couldn't show on the scoreboard, you might have what feels like an upset victory.
I think it's more that the total would be still be correct because the total would be expected to go up into double digits.
Oh,
But for a
okay, on the far
single
right.
inning, you could
Yeah.
conceivably get 10 runs, and it would be like, well, it's not prepared to show you two digits. But the manual like explicitly mentions that,
Yeah.
and that does kind of feel like the sort of thing that I'm sort of surprised that even if it wasn't like a full on glitch or like a full on bug in the sense that it was like a you get one of the where it overruns a value, kind of like the Pac-Man level glitch, where the final level it increments and it just breaks because the values have ran into the wrong spots.
It's like what we thought Y2K was gonna be.
I mean, it's what Y2K would have been if they didn't fix it.
Yeah.
And so they did actually. I'm both impressed that they were on the ball to take care of that, but
Eh,
also like they put that in the manual. Be like, yeah, no, we're on that. We've dealt with it.
yeah. I think Nintendo, we're finding through this podcast, really had a kind of impeccable quality control all the way down to like letting people know things in the manual like that. They're real perfectionists at that company for the longest time. And I like, there's lots of little animations. I would say that one of my Joy Cons is that the running animation just looks really stiff and feels very slow. And so it's sort of agonizing to watch your runners plodding from base to base and your fielders just sort of almost crawling towards where the ball went. But for every animation that I think is kind of meh, there's also like really nice ones. Like I like you can see the pitcher checking the bases before he pitches. Did you ever get a home run in this game?
Yes,
Yeah, so it's like you actually hear the crowd. It's like, like it sounds exactly like that. It's like tire releasing pressure. But you know what? They found a way to simulate a cheering crowd in a 1985 baseball game, and I thought that was kind of cool. And like the stands all light up and flash. So yeah, more complex and more impressive than I expected. Do you have any other Joy pros about the game?
I think that covers it on the pros side.
All right, so give me what you didn't like, Mike. Give me your Joy cons.
So I think first of all, since you were talking about it, and it ties in with the speed, I think the fielding speed just feels frustratingly slow.
Yes. So, and that's like I think the biggest con is that you cannot control your outfielders. And it's hard to fault it because like you said, this is a lot for a game to keep track of. So to switch you on the fly from controlling player to player, they probably just hadn't figured out how to do that yet.
I wouldn't mind if it was faster about it. I think that's what's
Yeah.
frustrating is sitting there and just like I can't do anything, and I'm watching them run around a bit around the bases.
Which then would later come up in Super Baseball Simulator, but you were like, I didn't think this game had this problem. And then it was something else entirely.
Yeah, and then
We'll get to
we'll get
that.
to that.
Yeah.
And then it did feel like there was a bit of frustration a couple times where if I had a runner trying to get between bases, that the fielders moved much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Felt like that should have been.
consistent.
a closer in speed thing, and so it would have had been more slightly more skill based of actually throwing the ball to get someone out or cornered, and not that the fielders move at double speed.
Well, and it's also it's hard to then, on the fly make the right decision because if the players are moving at different speeds, it can be difficult to gauge, do you have time to get another base or is this guy going to get to the ball way faster than like, other players would. Yeah, I agree. It's
Yeah, I'm
inconsistent.
also not terribly thrilled with the way that they set up the controls for the bases, because I think in this one it is that you are having to hit, you know, one of the buttons and the direction for the base that they're currently at.
Yeah, which in my head made more sense than selecting the base you want them to run to.
In my head, it did not.
Okay. Because I just imagine a situation where two players are sort of running for the same base, and so how do you differentiate which one you want to go?
Well, I think A and B are used where one of those is advancing and one of those is basically running back.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I
those
guess
give you
so.
a direction. And so I think in my
Sure,
mind, like anywhere along the baseline from first to second, that player is trying to get to second base.
that's true.
Whereas they are not always at first base.
Right.
So the destination
Yeah,
staying fixed is the way
more
it's,
logical.
yeah, at least to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. And another thing that sort of made this game feel kind of empty is that there's no music during the gameplay. You only get little jingles during team changes between innings. I just kind of found it lacking in some ways, and it's an old game, so you can't fault it too much. You kind of got to give it a lot of credit for what it accomplished. But if you have other baseball games to choose from, it sort of makes this game feel like it hasn't aged that well. The biggest thing it's missing is the ability to hit people with the ball. Because that's what my brothers and I love to do in Tommy Lasorda's baseball on the Sega Genesis. And as we discovered, is a major part of the next game.
Yeah. I was wondering if we were going to get to Tommy Lasorda's here.
Tommy Lasorda's gonna come up. I actually almost did a whole like conspiracy slide because I was certain that our next game stole sprites from Tommy Lasorda's baseball, but it just seems more like they're very similarly drawn, but it's not an identical
Yeah.
sprite.
And I was, because I felt we did have, having the Dodgers in this unofficially
Yeah.
may be the closest we get to Tommy Lasorda's baseball on this podcast.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we'll do a special episode about Tommy Lasorda's baseball and kicks because of all these games that just keep coming up organically. Okay, so anything else to say about baseball on the NES before we go on to the second game for today?
I was going to ask because I'm curious, how did your game go for this, or games if you did more than one?
You mean like did I do well?
Yes.
So I sort of quit while I was ahead somewhere around inning 5 or 6. I never really felt compelled to get all the way to the end of a 9-inning game.
Interesting.
Did you have a rough time with it?
Definitely a rougher time than when I think I had like the first inning went great and then it went
Yeah.
downhill very fast. And so I went into the bottom of the ninth trailing 12-10
Oof.
and managed to come back and win that.
Wow, that must have been a cool moment.
It was very satisfying.
Wait. So and then there's no season to this game. There's no like tournament mode, which Mike, did you beat baseball on the NES?
I Yes, I think I did.
You Nintendo did. I didn't.
Yeah.
Well done.
I did not really think about it in that context, but yeah, I mean, that was kind of
If
it.
the if there's only one game mode and you beat the game or you won the game of baseball you played, you beat this game.
Excellent.
Yeah, good job. And you don't even use rewinds, and that's that comes in handy with the baseball game because like I don't like where that hit went. I'll try again. Although I did find myself not rewinding that much in these games because it really seemed to defeat the purpose. Like this isn't like a platformer where I want to see the next level. This is just like, if it doesn't go well, that's part of playing a sport. So I didn't cheat that much this time. Okay, next game.
Yes, on to the next one.
All right, so let's move on to our second and last game for today, Super Baseball Simulator 1000 on the Super Nintendo. All right. So, released in 1991 for the Super Nintendo, Super Baseball Simulator 1000 was developed by Culture Brain, and we're going to learn quite a bit about them today. I am totally not vamping as I pull up the description for Super Baseball Simulator 1000.
I do find it interesting that the TM makes it seems like they trademarked the word baseball and nothing else.
Thank you for saving me.
Yeah, because it's like super and simulator in red, and then the mid in between we have baseball in blue with the little TM symbol.
Yeah, Mike's referring to the title screen.
Yeah, it seems like they went for a very weird like copyright grab there.
Well, I actually have the answer to that is that this series is the Super Baseball series. And so Super Baseball was trademarked. And that's why the trademark is appearing after the baseball, but not the Simulator 1000, subtitle, if you will. But let's hear from the Nintendo Switch online description for Super Baseball Simulator 1000. It says, "Get ready for the high intensity of ultra plays. This sports title was released for the Super NES console in 1991, attracting baseball fans with the superhuman spectacles that are ultra plays. Use plays like Phantom Ball, which will make the ball vanish mid pitch, or Meteor Hit, which will knock out fielders who make contact with the ball before it bounces. On top of the 6 teams of the Ultra League, you can also play standard baseball using 6 teams of the Atlantic League and the 6 teams of the Northern League for a grand total of 18 baseball teams. And to add to that, you can also use the edit mode to create your own original team. And for even greater thrills in multiplayer mode, you can set the game so it doesn't display the type of ultra play you're going to use." that got really specific. Any thoughts on that description, Mike?
I find it fascinating that
Mm,
it focuses so heavily on what I ignored most of the time when I was
the
playing
edit
this on my
mode.
own. Hmm?
The edit mode or the ultra plays?
The ultra plays.
You ignored the ultra plays? That was the best part of this game. Okay, well let's get to that when we get into the actual game. If you don't mind holding those
Yeah,
thoughts. Can we talk about the cover art?
we certainly can.
Okay, so I'm showing Mike here the North American box art for Super Baseball Simulator 1000. I love this cover. It's this really beautiful ink on canvas style. It has all these dramatic close-ups of the players. You can see them swinging and pitching, and you can actually see like the tension in their eyes and on their expressions. I'm curious if these were based on actual players because they really seem like fully realized people. And then in the back, you have like this sort of Rembrandt-esque depiction of the crowd as just sort of like colored smudges. Yeah, I don't know. I think the box art is really nice. Do you not like it?
I find it. I think it's a tad too busy, and I
Yeah.
think that's less. I think that's less the artwork almost and more the logo approach. Although
Okay.
I will say I do like because I was trying to figure out if this is based off anything, and then I realized that I think I can read only one team name on one of the jerseys.
Yeah, the brain.
Yes,
And then the other team also says brain in a different color, implying that all the people in this baseball league are teams named Brain.
I mean if it works.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I know what you mean. Like there are 5 different players, in a close up and maybe even a 6th baseball player in silhouette in the background. But I don't know, it just seems unique. It seems like it's a result of a real piece of effort. So, what do you think, Mike, of the Japanese box art in comparison?
Oh, that's interesting. This feels like it leans into the ultra stuff more
Yeah,
because this does have it has more of a cartoonish sense to it,
the kind of anime manga style.
which also lets them do stuff like I think like we have a picture with fire behind him kind of stuff.
Yeah, like Super Saiyan style, kind of showing that he's doing some sort of super pitch attack.
Yeah, so I feel like that plays up that a lot more.
And even funny to the point that like even the jerseys all say ultra now instead of brain. So ultra this was called ultra baseball in Japan, and then that was translated into the baseball and super baseball series from North America. And I also like the fact that on this cover you see a little sort of cutaway to the manager sort of trying to think of decisions or trades or whatever, because that's something you can do in this game. You don't have to play, you can play as the manager and just swap in and out who's playing and just see how they do. Which is I think cool a
You can
cool
go even
option.
further than that.
Go ahead.
You don't have to do a darn thing. You can watch.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
No, but the manager you still has like some involvement.
Okay.
You can straight up have two computer teams play and watch and see how that goes.
Oh, almost like you're just watching an actual baseball
Yeah,
game.
and you can even go a step further and skip watching the games and just find out the scores.
I feel like there's like this would make like for a really fun gambling night. You could have like a whole sports betting bracket, but just instantly resolve games and
It's actually really interestingly not instant.
oh, like it's almost like it has to crunch the numbers.
It's actually running the games, and so it was actually really interesting. Was because I tried this because I tried a short season, and I we may come back to that a bit later. But one of the things I noticed with that was when it would simulate a game, the speed with which numbers were coming up as it would fill in the innings
Yeah.
varied based off not entirely, but sort of correlated to if there were major runs or not.
Right, because it would take longer for those players to run around the bases.
I think less for them to run around the bases, but more just that there's more. If three players get struck out, that's going to go faster than if people are actually getting on base and stuff like that.
But in the mode you did, you were skipping the matches and not even seeing this happen. You could just tell that the game was like thinking and resolving each run like sort of individually.
Yeah, that the zeros would fill in pretty quick, but if it paused, it's like okay, there's probably going to be a number that comes up.
Interesting. That is cool, actually. I didn't know that the Super Nintendo could do stuff like that.
Yeah, and it was because I don't think they didn't have a heavily optimized approach to it, or that they couldn't do it. They couldn't process it that fast, and so they
Right.
process it quickly, but not instantaneously. And so you
Cool.
could actually see that as it would come up, and you would get results of who had the runs and stuff.
Yeah, so you really could armchair this whole thing.
Oh yeah,
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Well, so Culture Brain is the makers of Kung Fu Heroes, which we're going to play later on this podcast, and they also developed a game called The Magic of Shahrazad, a game based on the legends and the collected tales of the 1001 Nights. Mike, are you familiar at all with Shahrazad and the 1001 Nights, like from a literary perspective?
I've only read the Edgar Allan Poe fan fiction.
Oh, wait, written by Edgar Allan Poe?
Yeah, he wrote a 1002nd story. Basically, there's this question. So the premise is it's effectively. How do you pronounce that name again?
Shahrazad.
So Shahrazad is basically like I can't remember what exactly she's putting off with stories.
Okay, so let me give the listeners that, and then you can segue. So Shahrazad is actually a really interesting figure in literary history. She is a narrator character, sort of akin to the Crypt Keeper or like Marge on the Treehouse of Horror episodes. And the legend that she's in has to do with this sultan who gets cheated on and then becomes so paranoid of getting cheated on again that he marries a virgin every morning and kills her by nightfall before she has the chance to cheat on him. Shahrazad, tired of seeing all the young women in her village being, brutalized by the sultan, decided to offer to marry him willingly. And to delay her execution, she would tell a story that has a cliffhanger. And she would deliberately do it at night so that she wouldn't have time to finish the story and would have to finish it in the morning. And then, of course, the following night, she would start a second story, which she would refuse to finish. And this she did for 1001 Nights, or as Disney would call them, Arabian Nights. And that's the collection of stories. So Edgar Allan Poe, I'm guessing, was a fan of those stories.
Yeah, and so basically the premise is because I think it ends with kind of like I think it's like effectively it's like all right, fine, we're not going to do the executions anymore.
Yes, he the king after 1,000 stories and 1,000 nights realized he loved her and his heart had softened.
Yeah, and so basically Edgar Allan Poe's story starts off with it's like from there, someone's like, "Hey, what were you going to tell him what if you had to do this one more night?"
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's not great.
Oh no, Edgar Allan Poe wrote bad fan fiction.
Yeah, it's weird. In part because he tries to run through a whole lot of ideas, so it does
Right.
get like weirdly sci-fi and stuff. So it's basically like, this is a set in the past kind of deal, and like set in Edgar Allan Poe's past, and
Right.
basically has her trying to describe the way he thinks someone of that time would describe like modern technology, like
That's
trying to
very
describe like a
meta.
large ship
I
kind of
gotta read
stuff.
this.
It is weird.
Mike, if I'm lying, I'm dying. Do you know what author I read to my students today?
I mean, I'm going to presume Poe.
Yeah, what if it wasn't? That'd be weird.
It'd be a weird. I mean, it would be a weird
Yeah,
segue.
Hemingway. All right, enough about Shahrazad, Mike. Stay on topic here. Got some trivia for you. The game Super Baseball Simulator 1000 is a sequel. There was a Baseball Simulator 1000 on the NES, and surprisingly, it's almost as feature rich as its 16-bit sequel and looks really good for an NES game. I would even argue it might look even better because, Mike, can you see this screenshot on the right here? If I asked you to describe what it was for our audio listeners, what are you looking at?
So we have a shot that appears to have the pitcher on fire,
Which you can do in Super Baseball Simulator.
and then it has insets to show the runners on both first and third.
Yeah, but the picture on the right is what I was trying to get to.
I didn't know that that's where we were going with that. So yeah, so the picture on the right has a space station
Yeah,
and a planet in the distance.
yeah, and the those little boxy shapes though down there, those are the spectators. So the NES version had a space station stadium where like all the spectators in the audience were like on these floating boxes, and there was like satellites and comets and planets in the background. And I was like, that was easily cooler than anything we saw in the Super Nintendo game. Would you not agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was kind of bummed. Like, why would you have that in the NES game, and then the more advanced one that could make it look even cooler? You keep it all Earthbound.
I guess
Like, come
because they
on.
wanted to make it seem a bit more grounded.
Well, and it's confusingly titled Baseball Simulator 1000, but it's got simulator in the name, and you can use power ups to turn the ball into a cloud or a feather, or to set the pitcher aflame so that he throws faster. Like, it's a really over the top game if you choose to play it that way.
What's the confusion part there that you mentioned?
That it's called simulator?
Yes.
Wouldn't baseball simulator imply that it's going to simulate actual baseball?
I mean, yeah, but I feel like that's exactly what I did. Like it
What do you
has the
mean?
ultra things, but it really feels like it works without that.
Yeah, no, no, no. The super attacks are definitely a wacky introduction, or sorry, a wacky inclusion. The game is very full featured without that. It's more like a bonus. But I do think it's that feature that sets this game apart. So, and depending on where it's advertised, it's sort of more fully featured. So I just kind of find this simulator title a little bit misleading. Can we also talk about the other weird thing about the title? Baseball Simulator 1000. Mike, did you notice anything about how that number is written?
Yes, I'm going to say this in the least condescending way possible.
Yes.
I'm very proud that you've been calling it 1000 the whole time and not calling it like 1.0 or something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally wasn't doing that before we recorded. But so I was very confused why it was Baseball Simulator 1.000 instead of a comma, and I learned quite a bit. Mike, do you want to take this since you seem to already know why it's written that way?
Yeah. So, one of the important stats is someone's batting average, which
Right,
is very simply what portion of the time that they're at bat do they get a hit.
right.
And so that's some nice simple math of
It's on the screen.
yeah, I don't like that you put at bats with a hyphen in there because it looks like it's supposed to be subtraction. And I was about to be like, there should not be subtraction in this equation.
This was from mathmashup.com. I did not make this image.
Okay, we will judge them for this.
No, we won't. We're using their image.
Okay, I will judge them for this. You will not. And so it's the hits over the number of times they're at bat, and that is normally represented. It's visually shown as a decimal to
Yes.
3 digits after the decimal.
This thousandth place, yes.
Yeah. And so someone who, if you have over a period of time where they got a hit every time they were at bat, then that, simply put, that math turns to one. If you want to think about it as a percent, it's 100%. But for in baseball, it's referred to as batting 1,000.
Right. Because if someone hits, or excuse me, if someone hits the ball into play exactly 1/3 of the time, their batting average is .33, or they would say their batting average is 333. You don't say it as a decimal. You say it as a whole number, even though it's written as a decimal. It's kind of confusing. So, Mike, do you know about the only MLB player in the history of the sport to actually have a 1,000 batting average?
This is going to be one of the people who like played like one game or something.
Sure is. Say hello to John Pachorik, who at the age of 18 played one game for the Houston Colts in 1963. He
Of
took the
course.
plate 5 times against the New York Mets and ended with 3 hits and 2 walks. He then had to retire due to a back injury, so he never picked up a bat in MLB again, but his perfect record was thus preserved.
With the team's name is the Colts.
That wasn't the full team name. It
Okay, there was the Colt
was
45s, I presume, because
yes, correct.
the hat just says 45s, and I'm like,
Sorry,
of
yes.
course, Texas has the Colt 45s as a team in their history.
Sure did. They absolutely did. I thought that was cool though. I
Yeah,
like that
and things like
story.
this is why I feel like a lot of records usually have like you needed to do X number of games before we start caring about your
Don't take
statistics.
this from John Pachorik. Let him have his thing. He even got a book out of it. Let's praise this game, Mike. Let's give some joy pros. So, like our previous game, Super Baseball Simulator 1000, it does not have any featured licensed teams, but there is an expansive edit mode that lets you build your own custom team. You can pick their power ups, their jersey colors. You can even name individual players. And I thought that was really clever because they didn't have the license for actual teams. But if you cared enough and you had the time to do it, you could just build, you know, the Dodgers from when is the game made? 1991. There was nothing stopping you from doing that. I thought that was clever.
I mean,
I
you
didn't
could
mess with it.
build the Dodgers from any year.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you could recreate the Black Sox. You could do all kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be almost be interesting if this game had a following and there were people who were, playing out modern seasons with actual team player names from, today's teams.
Yeah, no, it's this game really leans into what I'm basically gonna say I feel like hardcore baseball fans are the nerdiest sport fans that exist.
Because they're real number junkies.
Hugely so.
Yeah,
It's why I have been to plenty of football and basketball games.
right.
I have never been to one of those games where someone is doing the detailed sort of scorekeeping that fans do at baseball games
Yeah, they
sometimes.
have like a big like binder almost.
Yeah, where you're tracking all the pitches and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, pretty impressive. Well, I feel like for me, the biggest joy pro of this game was something that you didn't really care for, and it kind of reminds me of our Mario Tennis episode. I really liked in Mario Tennis the mode where you could use the Mario weapons. This game has an absurd number of what's called ultra plays, combining the batting powers and the pitcher powers. There's over 30 different like special attacks. You got ones where like the pitcher will get 3 clones and they'll all throw a ball, but only one will be the actual ball to hit. There's moments where you can make the screen spin. You can light your pitcher on fire. So, like I said, they pitch faster. You can turn the ball into a bomb after it makes contact with your bat so that it will bounce off the ground, explode, and fly in a different direction. And there's even a batter power where after you hit the ball, you scramble the controls of the defending team.
Like a jerk.
Nothing to say about that one, Mike?
Yeah, no. I said it there. No, yeah, that was incredibly annoying.
So we played this right before recording, and I hit a pretty unexceptional hit into left field, but Mike didn't realize that his controls were scrambled, and so his fielders just never show up on screen, and I got an in the park home run because no one could seem to find their way to the ball. It was wild.
Yeah, I kind of wonder how far those players could go before that stopped working.
Yeah.
Like, there's questions I have about what was going on elsewhere, or if they all bunched up in like one dense spot. Um,
They're just all in the dugout. But Mike, you weren't as enamored with the ultra plays as I was.
Not really, no. And I think this simply reflects that you are not a sports person.
Yeah, I find baseball boring, I'll be honest.
I honestly also find it boring.
Yeah,
I mean, it's better than cricket, but that is
a low
not a
bar.
compliment to either sport.
Unless you like cricket, in which case like, follow, and subscribe. Continue.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to take the international audience with that.
I think half our audience is international at this point. So, yeah, I don't know. So, I thought you liked games like NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, like the sort of extreme sports games.
I actually, and what I'm going to read what I wrote down exactly is
Good.
that the Ultra is not Ultra enough to really be fun. NBA Jam feels like it owes this.
Yeah, yeah, this game predated NBA Jam by quite a lot, but no one ever talks about this one. I mean, I don't know. I thought they were pretty ultra. Like one of the attacks is that you turn the ball into like a lightning cloud that you can guide around. And there's this weird attack that like I'm calling him attack because that's how it kind of feels. The pitcher turns the ball into like this weird little blob, almost like Gooey from our Kirby episode. And you proceeded to then just deliberately move your players in front of the ball so that I would keep hitting them and you would get free walks. I thought that was a pretty brutal strategy that you did to your players.
I mean, they're free agents. They know what they're in for.
Wow. Wow. That's a controversial take.
I think it's because it doesn't really. I think in something like NBA Jam, which is amazing, I feel like the power ups in that feed into the flow of the game.
Yeah.
And I think as a combination of both how it's implemented here and just how baseball works, it doesn't really feel, or baseball doesn't have enough of a flow for you to then weave something else into it. It's already kind of disjointed. So having, there's situations where I missed swings because it was, one pitch, I'd missed a pitch and I was trying to switch to an ultra attack. The next pitch would be coming in while I was trying to do that selection, for example.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like that's the risk of the ultra things. Like, yeah, you can activate it, but you better not be distracted and you better have time before the pitcher fires their shot at you. I think you need to give the game a bit more credit though, because we played on unlimited mode, so we were just firing off ultra plays left and right. The intended way to play it is that you have a set number of ultra points to use throughout the whole game, and every ability has a different ultra cost. So the ones that are super helpful, such as, controlling exactly where the ball goes, that takes 10, whereas the other ones take 2 or 3. And so it became this sort of resource management thing where you have to decide, okay, I have a limited number of super attacks. When do I want to activate this? When do I have the bases loaded? When is there, I really need this strikeout from either a defense or an offense or whatever. I think that's a cool concept. It's like in Street Fighter if you just had the super meter automatically and it was just a matter of when to unleash it. I thought it was neat.
I will note I did try that. I had played one game of this, and of course, I played this against a team who didn't have the super powers because,
Go.
of course.
That's mean. I didn't You shouldn't be able to do that.
Well, I
You
did.
did. Yeah.
So I think even with that, I kind of still had the same. I had the same issue with it, and that was where it was limited. It was limited, and I was the only one that could use them, and it still didn't really fit the flow as well.
Uh, well, I thought we were having fun when we played two-player mode. I didn't like this game nearly as much playing against the computer, but it felt wacky and fun, and I beat you. So that's probably a big. I don't get to play my sound effect just for beating you, do I?
No,
I could
I
probably.
am not the final boss of anything.
Well, I mean, not gonna go there. That's a creepy joke to make. Okay, Joy Cons, Mike. So I thought that despite all the imagination that went into the Ultra plays, I thought a lot of the game looked kind of drab. Sort of uninteresting. I kind of wish that they had taken the Smash Tennis approach and made themed stadiums because it's like you already had wacky powers mode. Give me wacky stadiums. But I mean, I'm gonna guess you disagreed because you're really more here for the simulator aspect than the ultra play part, huh?
I think so, yeah. So actually, like that's actually what impressed me with the game was the extent that they actually built that up.
Okay.
Like, did you try anything with the seasons?
Well, yeah, so that was another one of my Joy Cons is that there's just you can customize so much, you can run your own seasons, but I just find these screens really hard to understand. They're so abbreviated, and there were multiple times where like tried to start a mode and I would get like at a dead end in the menu and not know what to press to get something else to happen. I just found just the numbers pasta and just the endless menus. It was impressive that the options were there. I'm wondering if you had a better experience because you read the manual, but I found this just, you know, it felt like trying to do calculus.
I didn't do too much with the editing, like the creation of teams or anything. But
Yeah,
immediately it was, or like I said, baseball fans are the nerds of sports fans.
right. Which is praise, by the way. He's not saying that critically.
Yeah. And so the ability to have that much control on this, and I think this had some ability to save this stuff, which is kind of
Yes.
necessary because you can do a 165 game season.
Yeah, it's crazy. I saw that. Is that how many games are in a regular baseball season?
162 in a regular season currently.
Wow, so even more than reality.
Yeah, I don't know if that's shortened or 165 was easier, or if the Japanese baseball leagues are like one are
Oh, yeah, good
165 and
call.
it was
Good
set
call.
off that.
Hmm.
But yeah, it has so much going for that where it's like for people who would be very interested in this, I'm not surprised. And someone who really wanted to easily could do create a team, create six teams if they wanted to, put them all that stuff in, and even just watch those games or simulate
Yeah.
them. And they could be playing this entirely on like this additional level where it's not even about their individual gameplay, it's about the balance of those teams or something like that.
It can truly become a baseball simulator,
Yeah, no, that's why I'm like that. It really is.
simulating it on multiple levels.
Yeah, as my notes say, simulates games without playing.
Right. You can't get more literal than that.
Yeah, and so I did go through. I did a short season and just let it play through, and just got and would just go through each game of nope, play this automatically. And I think I could have just jumped in for any games I wanted to if I had been so
Oh,
inclined.
and like start controlling it.
Yeah, that I could have just gone like, you know what, I'm going to
Oh,
play this one. So I could have, if I wanted to, been more involved.
right.
I'll come back to why I didn't do that in a moment, but I went through and because I was curious how that would play out. And as you're going through, you're simulating game by game at any given game. And so for it was six teams where they each play every other team, which is something like 15 games.
That's a lot. Yeah, and it's funny because even you describing this, I feel like it's like the menus, like I'm sort of spacing out on all the
Yeah.
numbers. I just don't think I have the head for this. You seem to.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was like I decided to go through it. Keep in mind, I didn't play any of the games. I just let it go through
Yeah.
and skip it and just would watch because it has at the end of a game, it kind of has like a news broadcast.
Well, yeah, it's basically just a woman sitting at a sports desk and then there's more numbers on the screen.
Yes. Yeah. And it just has a little bit it has basically the runs per inning and then also what players had what runs or something.
Mike, I think you're a baseball nerd. I feel like you kind of got off on all these like
I'm not,
attention to
but
detail. You appreciated that it was there.
if it wasn't for the sport, I'm all about the math.
Gotcha.
And so at any given point during that, like
In Moneyball.
in between games, it's exactly the Moneyball kind of concept. It's all sabermetrics.
Oh,
And
yes.
so
Sabermetrics.
at any given point between games, you could actually, instead of going to the next game, you could go to the standings and you could see not just the standings of, wins and losses for each team. You could also see a grid of wins and losses per other team. So you had a grid of, this team plays this team and the record's this.
We gotta find a way to reach out to the people who made this game because someone worked really hard on this, and they're like, "How come no one appreciates this
Yeah.
crazy game we made?" And like, here comes Mike. Like,
Yeah. And so for what I played, it was all each one of those boxes was either 1-0 or 0-1 because they either won or lost the one game. But over the course of a season, you can see that building up.
right.
And then it would also give you the top 30 hitters.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't mean to yuck your yum, but like, this is just it's all just like stat dumps.
It is, and I'm just impressed that they were able to like that is so much that they're keeping track of.
It's a lot of calculation. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in fact, and they're keeping track of that to such an extent that if you were playing so because the players have sort of their innate stats of, this is the stat of this player that determines how they play. If you're just playing like a one-off game, when like someone comes up to bat, it'll show what their batting average is. And that's like what that character's profile, what it is. If you're doing a season, it actually calculates that. So when they come up, that's their batting average this season, which is presumably close to what it's supposed to be.
It sounds it sounds like a Black Mirror episode where, in fact, there is a real living baseball league inside the cartridge. Like, it's actually like a tiny city. Do you know what I'm
And
saying?
so yeah, so it has all this stuff going on. And then of course the great part is and then at the end, when a team finally clinches the pennant, which in my case, I guess it didn't have to work out this way. In my case, it was like the second to last game was two undefeated teams. And it did come up with a whole screen saying, I wish I knew what team it was because they just abbreviated a bunch of them to two letters and they're meant to be cities clearly, and I don't know. I
Okay.
think it may have been meant to be Houston because it was just HO.
Okay.
And it was like, so it ended up with like a Ho clinches the playoffs, and then they go to like a whole celebration thing, and then like the team picks up one of the players and then throws him up into the air, and then he flies into the stands and explodes, and then it goes back to like the next game of the season.
Did you Mike, you buried the lead again. Are you telling me there's a cutscene of a fan getting thrown into the stands and they explode like they're one of the bomb balls?
A player, but yes,
Did you take screenshots of this?
no, I wasn't prepared for that to happen, and I don't know how to do screenshots with this.
It's There's a screenshot button. I'm giving you a homework assignment because I couldn't recreate what you did if I tried.
Oh, it's really easy.
Well, okay, well
You
maybe
just set up a season and then don't actually play any games.
okay, but I'm not trying to be obtuse. I
Yeah,
literally tried to set this game to autoplay seasons and I couldn't figure it out. That's how bad the menus were to me.
right. Yeah, that bit was a bit tricky.
I'm glad you found your way through to appreciate this incredibly detailed aspect of the game. I just found it, and I read other reviewers saying this too, is that it's almost like a moot point because of how confusing the menus are to navigate. And the menu might have come into handy there. Is there anything you don't like about this game?
I will add with that. I think depending on how we define it, I think you counted doing this as finishing the tennis game. I think this. I don't know if that counts as me beating this or
Oh
not.
my god, you I didn't play the sound effect when I did that for the tennis game.
Yeah, but here
So
I
you
technically didn't lose.
you didn't play.
Technicalities.
I'm not playing it. I
All
didn't
right,
get it in the tennis episode. You don't get it for this one.
all
But
right, that's fair.
surprising parallel, I have to admit.
Yeah, and that was a better option because when I played this, it did not go great.
Yeah.
When you played this, did you run into the mercy rule that this has built in?
Where it's like if you're losing so badly, it just calls the game and says just go home.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know. You must have gone really badly. How far behind do you have to be?
If a team is winning by 10 runs or more at the end of an inning, and actually,
Oof.
I think I may have been first up to bat. So I think it was just once they were up by 10, it called it so I tried to do 5 innings, and the game decided at 3 innings that
Yeah, done.
we're done. I was losing 11-1.
Ouch.
So
That's
that was
rough.
not going great. I think it's mostly because, and there may have been a way to get a handle on this that I didn't get, but was just getting a handle on I could hit the ball, and most of mine ended up being pop flies that were caught. And I'm like, I don't know what I need to be adjusting here. If this is
Hmm.
I don't know if I need to be adjusting where I'm in the box more, if this is a timing thing or what.
So this is kind of like a Tommy Lasorda baseball thing, but I was having I mean I was winning. So I'm assuming I was doing something right. It's like you want the ball to be at like the tip of your bat, so you have to adjust yourself so the ball's as close to the tip of the bat as possible because if you hit in the middle of the bat, it'll be like a pop fly.
That could be it. And
Yeah.
I think I looked to try and see if there was an explanation on, it's like the instruction's like, here's how to swing the bat. I'm like, okay, how do I make the swinging of the bat be like good?
Right. How to swing the bat correctly.
Yeah, and that I was not finding as much.
So is that your Joy-Con that the batting is just sort of kind of not really that intuitive?
Yeah, like I don't know, like clearly I was doing something wrong, but I'm not sure what.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about the controlling of the fielders because there's something. It's better than not controlling them at all, but it's very frustrating that if you were because you move all the fielders at the same time
Yeah.
in the same way, and if you were trying to worry about something that's between two players, you kind of have to make the decision on where that on which you can't have. Oh, they're both going towards the ball, and then one of them will get it. You
And I
really have to
also
make the
found,
decision.
as much as I complained about baseball in the NES that you can't control the fielders, I kind of missed that in this one because there was a lot of times where like it seemed like I was in the perfect position to catch a fly ball and it would like land right at my feet. I was like, come on, I was right there. Like the little guy even put up his glove and everything. I feel like
Yeah,
that's the animation of the little fielder putting up his glove should communicate to the player, let go of the controller, you got it.
yeah. Though at least on this one, he could dive and jump if necessary.
Yeah, dive was there, slide was there. Like I said, you could hit players with the ball. So even if you weren't doing the wacky ultra plays, it still, I think, is a much more fully fleshed out baseball game, which isn't surprising considering it was came out 6 years later. Anything else to say about the game, either in joy defense or joy criticism?
I think that covers most of what I've got.
All right. Well, let's go to our rankings where we declare each game a Nintendo or a NintenDON'T. Let's start with baseball on the NES. I think, like the tennis game before it, this deserves a lot of credit for being one of the first iterations of the sport available on a home console. That's why it's just called baseball. You kind of got to respect the elders when it comes to games sometimes. But it just has the slow feeling gameplay and the fact that you have no control over movements of half the players in the diamond. It feels like too much of the game I'm just watching, and like you said, especially since the AI is like moving really slowly. I don't even know if you would have called it AI back in the day. Probably not. But yeah, this is a Nintendo don't for me. Not taking anything away from it. I just don't think it's aged that well. What about you for baseball in the NES?
Yeah, I think this had more features than I was expecting it to have going into it. But I think I've got to go NintenDO'N't as well, just because it is so slow to watch the fielding. Yeah, where it's like, this is slow and I have nothing to do with this, but I'm going to have to deal with the consequences of it.
It feels like it's wasting your time,
Yeah,
kind
if I
of.
wanted to watch something I can't change, but is going to ultimately be bad for me, I would watch the news.
Just look in the mirror. That was an insult to you, by the way. That's all of us. Okay, Super Baseball Simulator 1000. I, like I said at the start of this episode, not really a sports guy. I don't think baseball's ever really worked that well as a video game because it's basically a turn based sport, but there doesn't really feel like there's enough strategy in it because you can't really aim the ball reliably as the batter or the pitcher, really. And, when you're fielding, there's almost always an obvious choice when it comes to where you should throw it. But this game's addition of the ultra plays, I think it gives it a much needed shot in the arm when it comes to gameplay variety and wackiness. For someone like me who finds traditional sports games unappealing, this might be my favorite baseball game after playing it with Mike and just cracking up seeing the ball explode and the players getting spun like little tornadoes. I think it's a Nintendo. I just think you just got to make sure that you pick the ultra teams and enable the ultra plays. It's worth a try at least once, even if it might not hook you. I think it's going to be a good 20 minutes. Mike, I'm going to guess you're a Nintendo on Super Baseball Simulator. You seem pretty impressed by it.
I feel like I'm going to be a situation where I'm torn in that like this did not go well for me, but I'm impressed with how much they did with what feels like limited resources.
Yeah. But when it was going badly for you, did it feel like it was a skill gap or would it feel like this game is just not, logical or communicating to me enough?
I feel like this was, if it came down to having to play the game, I'm not thrilled about it, but this is, if you wanted to watch two computers play the game, I think this would go quite well.
Well, okay, but is that feature enough to give it a Nintendo then?
Honestly, I feel like I end up as a not terribly strong Nintendo, but a Nintendo on this.
Okay. All right. I thought you were going to maybe go another way. We had to throw it to the listeners. But listeners, though, I would love to hear your takes on these games, especially since Mike and I, in fact, maybe Mike, that can be our poll for this episode. Which is the better mode in Super Baseball Simulator 1000, Ultra Plays, or, the simulations? I'll let you figure out how to word that.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, we had a lot to say about two baseball games. I did not think it would get that in depth, but I thought it was really interesting. I always love talking to you. Well, thank you everyone for listening. This has been fun. I certainly found way more to talk about with baseball games than I thought I would. Mike, I always appreciate your insight. Always fun to talk to you. So hit us up at theoldswitcheroo.com. We zeet, we gram, we tube, we talk. You can follow it all by going to theoldswitcheroo.com. You can also from there join our Discord, or you can even leave an old timey voicemail, and we would love to literally hear from you. So, everyone, join us next time where we are going to be making like car insurance agents as we track the evolution of caveman games. So, that'll be really fun. Can't wait to see you. Thank you again for listening. Like, follow, and subscribe if you think we've deserved it. This has been the Old Switcheroo, where we've been talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I've been Mike.
And I've been Jaymo. Game on, everyone.
Car insurance agents?
The Geico cavemen.
Okay.
You can leave this in the outro if you want, if you think people are going to be confused. I guess the cavemen weren't insurance agents, they were like just civilians. Is Mike there? Where has my co-host gone? Is Mike there? Just remembered he's recording this song. I went to the bathroom and then Mike was gone. Will he come back? I sure hope so. Let's talk about what I see on his walls. He's got Muppet posters, giving Mike something to listen to later. I wonder if he's gonna be in his underwear. Wouldn't that be wild if you really are right now? I'm alone and cracking myself up this much. Oh man. What a delight. What a delight I am. He's back. Hello, Mike. Don't worry, no one was singing in your absence.
I don't know that song.
It does sound like a song title, doesn't it? In your absence. Oh, wait, no, that's In Your Eyes by Michael Bolton. Not even close, really. Okay. I discovered a benefit of your little rag to insulate the noise is that I get to put beer on it, and now it doesn't ruin the table. It's like a little coaster.